Hey everybody, welcome to the Jeff Rubin Show. I am Jeff Rubin here this week with Kumail Nanjiani.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Kumail is a stand-up comedian. You may have seen him on Conan or on Letterman. Kumail is on Franklin and Bash on TNT, which just got picked up for a second year. So Kumail's very busy, but perhaps most relevant to today's conversation, he has recently started a podcast called The Indoor Kids, which is all about video games. And that's what we're here to talk about today, video games. We just did an episode a few weeks ago that was kind of like our summer movie review, where we talked about all the big action movies that had come out this summer. Because summer's kind of when, the movie studios bring out their big guns. But the fall and that season leading up to Christmas is the summer of video games. Fall is the summer of video games because they want to put out all their big titles right before Christmas so everyone can tell their parents to buy them things. So all the big video games are coming out over the next few months, and there's almost too many to play. So I want to find out from Kumail what he's most excited about, and I've listened to a lot of your podcasts, Kumail. So if I could guess for a second, if I could speculate the game you're most excited about this Christmas, is it not Gears of War 3?
That's correct. That is correct. I wasn't even worried that you wouldn't be able to get it.
Yeah, it was so... I could hear the relief in your silence. Because you guys talk about Gears of War 1 and 2. As far as I can tell, you're still actively playing Gears of War 2.
Yeah, we play Horde mode all the time. Honestly, Horde mode is so much fun because the problem with playing online can be, you have kids who are throwing around swear words and questioning your sexuality, and it just gets old. So the best thing, a Horde mode is awesome because it's 5 of your friends, people you know, and you're just fighting waves and waves of bad guys.
And I think Gears of War, I'm sure there's some precedent, but if it existed before, Gears of War repopularized that. After Gears of War 2 introduced Horde mode, every major first-person shooter had some variation on it. Halo did it. Nazi zombies in Call of Duty is basically that format.
Yeah, I don't know what game before Gears of War 2 did it. I'm not familiar with it, but
I don't know if it did. It seems like it might have, but Gears of War certainly put that mode on the map and made it kind of a requirement.
Yeah, and now Halo has Firefight, which is basically the same, and Call of Duty has the zombie thing, as you talked about. It's just really fun, and there's a lot of strategy involved, and it's very satisfying when you beat it.
I get kind of stressed out when the format of the game, and you find this with tower defense games too, when there's just tons of little monsters attacking, you have to set up little towers and just try to last as long as you can. I get very stressed out knowing that I'm going to eventually lose. When you play Call of Duty zombie mode, there's no way to win. It's just a matter of how long can you last before the zombies overrun everything, and I find that very stressful.
That's like an exercise in futility, but in Gears and Halo, you can beat it. You can beat all the waves.
You can do well. It just keeps going and getting harder and harder, doesn't it? It's not just like game over. They'll just keep adding more monsters. No.
No, with Gears, once you get to wave 50, that wave is done. That map is done. Same in Halo. Halo, if you beat a certain number of waves, it's done, and it says you beat this map.
I guess I revealed just now how bad I am at video games and Gears of War specifically.
It's very, very difficult. It takes us a week of playing to get through a specific map.
So what are you most looking forward to about Gears of War 3? What are they adding to the game that you are excited about?
Well, the Horde mode, what they're adding is called Horde 2.0, and basically now you can buy everybody. When you kill the bad guys, you get credits, and you can use those credits to upgrade your weapons or get new turret guns up and traps and things like that. So that seems really exciting.
There's also very tower defensy.
It's very tower defensy. That's correct. Yeah. But it looks really cool, and I played it at E3, and the game felt good. Another cool thing they did is that humanity, story-wise, humanity's sort of losing, and they've been, fighting this war for many years, so they're out of resources. So they had to go and bring back older, defunct weapons. So a lot of the weapons in the new Gears of War are actually worse and weaker than the other weapons because they just had to bring, raid the closet and bring out stuff that they hadn't used in 20 years.
Do you play the single player and the multiplayer, just the whole package?
Yeah, I do. Well, there's Horde mode. Oh, there's another one called Beast mode. That's, I think, horde mode, but for bad guys, so you get to play the bad
Yeah, I
guys.
think it's the first time in Gears of War where you'll really be able to play as. I mean, you can play as what are they called? The bad guys in that game? The grunts,
Low.
the locust, of course. But I don't know. Like Left 4 Dead has that option too, where you can play as the zombies, and it's so overwhelming. I'm already having so much trouble playing, the quote unquote the normal mode that at least with Left 4 Dead, I never really got into playing as the zombies too, because there's all these new mechanics to learn.
Yeah, you know what? I love the Left 4 Dead games. I never once tried to play as the zombies. I love Gears of War. Honestly, I have a problem playing the bad guys. Like, I don't want to be. I don't want to be killing things that look human. Which is also a problem I have with Call of Duty. But I like being. I like being the good guys.
Maybe they could just do something like Rise of the Planet of the Apes, where you kind of see the story from the locust perspective, and you understand.
Yeah, or they should have like the humans being like shitty to their wife or something. Like beat their kids, and then you do it.
Gears of War 3 is so big, they've already sold 1 million copies of it. There are already 1 million pre-orders. Like, it's not even out yet, and it's already a hit. And I think it's because Gears of War, I think a lot of people that don't play video games don't realize this, but there is such a thing as a big budget video game, just like there's a big budget movie. And when you play Gears of War, it just looks more expensive and it feels more polished than other video games.
That's true. There are like blockbuster video games like the Halo games or that or Call of Duty. Like there are a lot of really, really cool smaller games, but these big blockbuster games, like you said, they feel like big Hollywood games. And I think the difference is you can have a big Hollywood movie and have it be really, really shitty. That happens every year, like the Transformer movies.
Yeah, there's tons of them.
But with a video game, I feel like the more resources you put in and the more money you put in, the game is better because ultimately all comes down to game mechanics. And the sharper the game mechanics are, the better the game is. In a movie, the special effects could be amazing, but the movie might still suck.
They haven't really improved the technology for games in a long time. We've been playing Xbox 360 for 5 or 6 years now. I think this is the point in the cycle where we probably see, usually, the next upgrade of the system with more power. But the fact is, making a game like Gears of War is so expensive that very, very few companies can afford to take advantage of the technology that we already have.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think whatever the next system leap is going to be, it's going to be smaller and smaller. Like, the leap from Genesis to PlayStation was so massive. And then PlayStation 2 was slightly less massive. PS2 to PS3 was even smaller. So whatever the next one is going to be, it's not going to be, it's going to be better, but, these leaps are getting smaller and smaller, which is why I think it's good that they're waiting a longer time to release the next console. Like they're letting this cycle ride out for a while, except for Nintendo.
I think the other thing that makes Gears of War stand out against even some of the other AAA titles coming out is that it's a console exclusive. Gears of War only exists on Xbox 360. And most games, 95% of games, they don't want to split the audience, so they make them for both, unless it's being made by Sony or Microsoft, basically. They'll put the games on both PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. And you can still make a good-looking game doing that, but to a degree, you have to program to the lowest common denominator so that it can run on both. Whereas exclusives like Gears of War can really take advantage of all these little tricks in the console and use it to fine-tune it and make them, the best-looking game that console can possibly show.
Yeah, and like you said, these exclusives, I remember back when it was I was thinking about this today, Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo, they had a lot of their libraries were very different. There was obviously the Sonic and Mario, but there were a lot of games like, Street Fighter came out on the Super Nintendo first, and Genesis had Mortal Kombat with blood.
Right, that was the difference.
I feel like back then, they had pretty different libraries. Now, with Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, except for a handful of exclusives, like you have the Gears of War games, you have Resistance, you have Uncharted, you have Halo, and you have God of War.
Yeah, those are the big ones.
Little Big Planet, but yeah, that's it. Both those consoles are really similar now, and it used to not be like that. Like the decision between Super Nintendo and Genesis was was difficult, but now you can't really go wrong with any system.
When people ask me, and believe it, they're asking me all the time, which system should I buy? And there's things like, do you want a Blu-ray player? Do you already have friends on Xbox Live? But if you put those very specific things aside, it basically comes down to, well, what do you want to play more, Gears of War or Uncharted? And that's really the only difference.
That's really the only difference. It's Halo and Gears of War versus Uncharted, Resistance, and God of War. That is all it comes down to.
I feel like since I've played Gears of War 2, I must have played at least 24 other games that have incorporated cover-based shooting in some way, have made a major mechanic of the game that you have to hide behind a wall and peek out and shoot people. But for some reason, for some intangible thing that's hard to put my finger on, I don't think anyone does it as well as Gears of War.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of first-person games started doing it now, and the cover system just does not work as well in a first-person shooter. You can't see yourself. You don't know how well you're hidden. It just doesn't work as well. But I honestly think it's cool. Like, video games do this a lot, where one game will sort of introduce a new mechanic or, a new gameplay mode, and then everyone else steals it. And I think that's how games evolve. I don't think it's stealing. Like, Halo took from Gears of War, they took the Horde mode, but Halo was the first one to have automatically regenerating health. Halo was the first one to have only 2 weapons, and that's now the standard for all console shooters.
But I think Gears of War popularized that cover-based shooting and made it something you see in every game today. And it's weird because no one does it quite as well, and it's a reason I can't put my finger on. When you play Gears of War, it just kind of works. Like, he sticks to the wall when you want him to, he pops out when you want him to, and when you play other games, it's just always like Grand Theft Auto 4 or Red Dead or any of the Rockstar games. Even LA Noire has cover-based shooting.
Yeah, I mean, I'm playing Crysis 2 right now, which is a first-person shooter. It's a really good game, but the cover system just does not work that well. I don't know how Gears of War did it, but the thing with the Rockstar games is they do so many things that they don't feel, and I love those games, but I definitely get the sense that they don't feel the pressure to have any one gameplay aspect be perfect. The shooting isn't perfect. The driving isn't perfect.
Absolutely. You know what they're the worst at Rockstar, and they do this in all their games, is stealth missions. They have the worst stealth missions in those games.
Why do they do that? But, I love those games. They're so epic and big, and, story is so important to them, which is sort of a rare thing in games even today. But, yeah, the stealth missions are bad, and no one real aspect could be a game on its own. Like, if the driving mechanics were a racing game, you would think it was the worst racing game ever made. Oh, another one, you asked me about a single-player mode. I really like the single-player mode. Their co-op campaign last year was really good. The writing is never great. The dialogue isn't great, but the world is really cool, and they've really built up this world, and they've really raised the stakes, and I think the third one is going to have a lot of payoff. I think the single-player mode is going to be really good.
You had the guy who plays Dom on the Indoor Kids, which was great and really fun to listen to. And there is a moment where you and him and everyone else in the room were talking about this big moment in Gears of War 2 where Dom finds his wife. And I have to admit, I had no idea what the hell you guys were talking about because I've played through and beat both Gears of War games, but as soon as a cutscene comes up, I'm skipping it. There are very, very few games where I will sit through the cutscenes, and Gears of War does not make that list. And I love the single player. I'll be playing the single player for Gears of War 3. I'm just not watching the cutscenes.
So what games, what games do you, obviously RPGs you watch the cutscenes for, right?
The thing is, I rarely play RPGs. Mass Effect, I will deal with them. LA Noire, I will watch the cutscenes. But even the news, yeah, you have to. That's the game. But even there, like the newspaper clippings, like I watched the first few and then I just kind of started skipping them. The games that I really like that have great stories rarely use cutscenes to tell that story. I'm thinking of things here like Portal, where it's kind of woven into the gameplay, or it's just
Bioshock.
It's not Bioshock would be a great example. I'm playing Deus Ex now, which is a game, by the way, that incorporates Deus Ex from 2000 or 2001 or whenever the first one came out, which is a classic game. And now they've just come out with another one. There's a sequel somewhere in the middle there, but no one speaks of it.
I played the sequel.
Oh my God, really?
It's not terrible, but apparently compared to the first one, it is pretty bad. It's not a good game. Like, if that was the first game, there would not have been a sequel.
I'm playing Deus Ex, the new one, Human Revolution, and I gotta say, I'm not crazy about it, and the internet seems to love it. People seem to love it, but I'm just not feeling it. And it's kind of the same problem as Rockstar. There's a lot of different things you can do, but I don't know that any of them are really fun. Like you can choose to sneak in, or you can choose to shoot your way through, or you can choose to talk your way in. The fact that they have all of them doesn't really apply to my single playthrough because I'm only doing one of them, and doing any one of them isn't especially fun sometimes.
Oh, it's just knowing that the other options are available is what the appeal is. But I've heard the graphics. I've heard it's one of the best looking games ever made. Is that right?
I'm playing it on 360, and it definitely suffers from a case of being made for everything at once. I believe and this is very, very rare these days, the PC version, and I have a Mac. I guess I could run Boot Camp, but I don't really give a shit that much. This rarely comes up. I guess the PC version is the definitive version and looks really good. The one on 360, it doesn't look any better than 100 other games you've ever seen. And the conversation, so you can have conversations and you have multiple options. And the writing in the game is excellent. It's a very well-written game, very interesting, a lot of interesting ideas. But L.A. Noire has kind of spoiled me for conversations, because when you play L.A. Noire and you're having a conversation, you have to watch the performance, and you really have something to chew on when you're deciding how to react. So now going back to not having that advanced facial capture technology and then just listening to someone talk and then having to pick if I should be aggressive or coy, it's almost like a guessing game now. I have nothing to go on. And you can upgrade your this augmentation thing so you can like sense their pheromones and know what they want to say, but that's not particularly fun either, because then the computer's just telling you what you should be telling them.
Yeah, I feel like L.A. Noire really raised the bar on that, and I think we'll see. It's just, I didn't think L.A. Noire was perfect, but it did so many new things, and it did them well enough that that game was really impressive, and I do think that kind of facial capture stuff is going to become more and more common. Like, if you think of when GTA 3 came out and they introduced that open world in that way, so many games sort of stole that. And I think with L.A. Noire, the same thing's going to happen.
We talked about this briefly on another episode of the podcast. It actually was the summer movie one, so I don't want to dwell on it too much, but I think what was so impressive about the facial technology wasn't the technology unto itself, though that was very impressive, but the really impressive thing is the way they integrated it into the gameplay. It wasn't just there to show off this cool new thing they did. The actual gameplay was about watching those performances, and the technology made it easier and made it better to watch those performances, and it made the actual game more fun, not just prettier.
No, it was definitely involved in the gameplay, and it was very active. Like the way you watch the cutscenes was very active, as opposed to what you're talking about. It seems sort of a passive way of watching cutscenes, which is how it's mostly been.
But I want to get back to talking about the games that are coming out this year, the stuff we're looking forward to. Gears of War, the big console exclusive on the Xbox 360 side. Over on the PS3 side, it's all about Uncharted 3. And here's another unpopular opinion of mine. I don't like Uncharted 2 very much.
Can I say something, Jeff?
Yeah.
I think that's crazy.
Uncharted 2 was, I believe, the most well-reviewed game of the year it came out, which was 2 years ago now. Here's my beef with Uncharted 2. It feels like, first of all, the graphics are gorgeous. I think it still might be the best-looking game I've ever played, even 2 years later. Maybe God of War 3. It's an incredible looking game. If you look at movies of it or you watch someone play it, it seems fun. But once you're actually playing it, so much of the game is just kind of running around the environment you're in, looking for a ledge to climb up, and then once you're on the ledge, you move around and look for the next ledge. Then you move around and look for the next ledge. And something like Prince of Persia, especially the first one, Sands of Time, it had the same type of exploration, but it was a little more involved. You had to really look at the room and get creative. Here, I feel like you're always just looking for that next piece of land that you can climb on. And if you're not doing that, then the other half of the game is a second-rate cover-based shooter.
Okay, I disagree with you almost completely. I love that game. I think what I liked about that game was that there was never any moment where you just going A to B and killing a bunch of people. Every sequence felt like a scene from a movie to me. So there's parts where you got a Gatling gun in a car and the car is driving and you're shooting people. Or there's an awesome scene where you're hanging on a billboard and you sort of jump back and forth between the front and the back of the billboard based on where the people are. There's one part where you're in a building as it gets hit by a missile, and like comes down. So while this building is coming down, you're controlling and you're fighting. And I actually thought I was going to say that I thought the cover system in that was good, not as good as Gears. I thought the shooting was good, again, not as good as a dedicated shooter, but overall, the experience of playing that game to me, with all the different sequences and the story, I was very involved in that game. Like the first time you see, this is a spoiler, but at the end when you start running into monsters, did you get that far? When you get to
I did. I did not beat it, and I was going to say that I didn't see that part, but I did, because they were like kind of snow beasts, right? It was an abominable snowman type thing.
Yeah, the first one you see is a snow beast, and then you see more slightly different kinds later. That was genuinely shocking to me. I thought the story is great. I'm sort of a sucker for Indiana Jones kind of stuff, and this is basically, the video game that Indiana Jones never had. I think the acting is good. I think the dialogue is good.
I think that game gets too much credit for its story. Yes, if you compare it to other video games, if you compare it to Mario or Call of Duty, it's pretty good, but it's still only as good as, say, a mediocre Nicolas Cage movie. The writing is about National Treasure good, which again puts it above other video games, but it's still not good.
I've never seen National Treasure, so I can't speak to that. I know it's better than the newest Indiana Jones movie.
I'd say that's fair, but
Yeah.
there's something in that game where the story and the gameplay felt very different, because the character is like, oh my god, I'm caught up in another adventure. What's going on here? I can't believe, like, he's kind of a reluctant hero, but then once you take control of him, he's murdering hundreds and hundreds of people. And not very rarely are they snow beasts. Usually he's just killing people. But then when you get to the cutscene, he's like, uh-oh, I can't believe I'm involved in this. But then when you get control of him, so much murder.
But that's his shtick, His shtick is like, oh, I'm not ready for this, and then he's really good at his job. It's like what Indiana Jones was, Indiana Jones never had that sort of thing of like, yeah, let's go kill some people and let's go on an adventure. He always sort of had a reluctance to him too, and that was part of his charm. And I think that's part of Nathan Drake's charm from Uncharted. I just thought that movie felt like. That game felt like a movie to me in that. The first scene when you're hanging off that train, that's how the game starts. It's so cinematic. It's so beautiful.
That game definitely makes gameplay where other games would use cutscenes. There's moments in that game that would be a pre-rendered movie in any other video game. And to the game's credit, is extremely cinematic and a gorgeous game. And there are parts where it feels like you're controlling a movie, but the whole thing just didn't come together for me. And maybe it's a situation, and this rarely comes up with video games for me. It's more about, you see this more, I think, with movies and TV shows, but the game was extremely hyped. I came to it a little late. I never played Uncharted 1, and it was supposed to be the best game of the year. And then I played it, and I was like, this is it?
Oh, I really, really loved it. I'm actually playing through it again right now.
Oh my god, I can't even imagine playing through it again. I swear there are some games I like. I'm like, so far I'm just shitting on party games. I like Gears of War. Let's move on. Well, I got one more game that I got one more really popular game that I don't like to make everyone mad about me before we start talking about some things I really am excited about. So the big game this year, every year apparently for the foreseeable future, is Call of Duty. But this year, there's something of a little storyline where Call of Duty is coming out at the same time as the comparable rival franchise, Battlefield. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, is that what we're getting this year, Modern Warfare 3?
That's right.
So Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 and Battlefield 3 are coming out at the same time. They're both very similar games. They're war simulators, and it's for some people it's something of an either or. The fan bases, even the devs, are kind of mad at each other about it. Do you have a dog in this fight?
I've played the Call of Duty games every year, but those are not my favorite games. Part of the reason is what I just mentioned. I would rather be fighting monsters than human beings, and what always made me uncomfortable a little bit about the Call of Duty games is that they are so based on fact and reality. I know they changed some things, but it just all seems so plausible. It makes me uncomfortable. The multiplayer is really good. The Call of Duty games have been good the last 2 years. They haven't really showed an improvement. Black Ops was good. Was it that much better than Modern Warfare 2? No, it really, really wasn't.
God, I think I put in Black Ops for 10 minutes, and I was just like, I just played this game. And I think you're right that Modern Warfare, particularly Modern Warfare 1, which I think is really what took Call of Duty to the next level. They had that experience system in the multiplayer that made it very addictive. But I don't know that since then they've done it's the biggest, most expensive game. So they obviously all look great. They all have a ton of production value. But I don't know they've done a lot to really change the gameplay game to game. And for some people, that's enough. It's almost like Madden. Just give me the new roster and the new levels. But for me, I agree with you. I like a little bit of fiction in my games. I want some monsters or some superpowers. I don't necessarily mind killing humans, but I need some sort of fictional construct in there.
Yeah, like Uncharted, that's a crazy world, weird shit's going on. I'll kill humans if crazy shit's going on.
Right, like our Grand Theft Auto, there's killing humans, but the whole thing's a little cartoony. It's not simulating an actual criminal.
Right, like the whole thing about Call of Duty is that it's real. Another thing, like when you play Halo or Gears, when you kill a bad guy, you have to shoot him like 50 times. They take some damage. In Call of Duty, really, 2 bullets will kill most people, and
which is more or less how it works in real life.
I know, which is what I hate about it.
Are you into the Battlefield series at all? I gotta say, being a little bit bored with the Call of Duty franchise and never being a huge fan of Battlefield does look pretty interesting. The vehicle stuff adds something to it. It seems like there's something of more teamwork involved. And if I had to pick up one of the two, and there's plenty other games I'm interested in this winter, but if I had to pick up one of the two, I'd probably pick Battlefield, just because it looks a little newer. Modern Warfare 3 doesn't look like it's doing anything new.
No, I mean, Battlefield has, it's a class-based sort of squad game, so the strategy's different than Call of Duty. I think you're right. I mean, there are so many games coming out this year. And the reason I would get Call of Duty is for multiplayer, and I'm going to have my Gears of War 3 for multiplayer, so I think I'm going to give it a pass this year.
All right, so that's enough of things I don't care about. I want to tell you the game I'm most excited about this year, and I think, if I remember correctly, you told me you had an opportunity to play it at E3, so I want to pick your brain on it. Arkham City. Holy shit, can I not wait for Arkham City. Arkham Asylum, the last Batman game, is probably my single favorite game on this generation of consoles. I loved it. I think it's about a 9 out of 10 as a game. It's not the best game. It's a very, 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 very good game. It's about a 9 out of 10 a game. It's not the best game of all time, but it's an 11 out of 10 on nailing Batman shit. They got every element of Batman that I want to see in there.
I think I agree. And you know what? That's a game that does a lot of different things. It does stealth, and it does combat, and it does them all really, really well. Like, no gameplay aspects really feel shortchanged. Like, they all feel tight.
No, the combat system in that game is terrific.
It's the best combat system I've ever had in a game like that.
It flows, but it's also, there's an elegance to it. You can't just button mash. You have to pay attention. So it's somewhat elegant, but it's also very brutal, which is how Batman should be. He should be kind of, this is so nerdy, but Batman should be just kind of moving in between people, kind of like Bruce Lee, but it should also be brutal like Arnold Schwarzenegger. I think it's kind of a mashup of those two things, and the combat system in that game nailed that so well. And I was thinking before our conversation, I was thinking about Deus Ex and how I don't like the stealth elements of it, and I was thinking, whoa, what stealth games do I like? And I don't know that I've liked stealth as much in any game as much as Arkham Asylum. It's not the heaviest stealth. I understand that some people are so into it that they want something a little heavier, a little more realistic, like maybe Splinter Cell. But it's just enough that it's kind of the fun parts about hiding and waiting.
Yeah, and even did you ever do all the challenge levels on
I
that
did
game?
more of the challenge levels than I do in most video games. A lot of video games have kind of, once you're done, they'll beat 100 enemies as fast as you can to kind of extend the replay value of the game. I almost never try those because by the time you're done with the game, you're done. But that game is a game I enjoyed so much that I did. And I'll tell you something else I don't usually do. I am ready to pre-order this game to get one of the pre-order bonuses.
What is that? Is that a Batarang?
Well, a lot of companies, this is something of a kind of a mucky practice that a lot of companies are doing. They make you pre-order the game through, say, GameStop or whoever. Basically what they'll do is before the game is done, they'll lock off one weapon or one level, and they make you pre-order the game through GameStop to get something you probably should have gotten on the disc anyway. It's not a great practice. I think it's a really poor trend in the gaming industry.
Well, the worst thing is that they'll have like Best Buy will have an exclusive and GameStop will have an exclusive. So there's no way you can get everything.
Right. And that's the problem with this game. They're doing it wrong, but I'm so into it, I just don't give a shit. Basically, it's just different costumes for Batman. Again, something else I would never care about in any other game. But because I like Batman so much, there are all these different specific Batman. Like, they have kind of a Neil Adams, late 70s, early 80s Batman in the gray and blue. You can do Dark Knight Batman, who's a little older. Someone has a Batman Beyond. Someone has Batman the Animated Series as a skin. And I don't know who has what. I got to look and figure out which one I want to get the most. But I mean, I'm buying the game anyway. I'm pretty much ready to lay down money early if it means that I get to play the game wearing a Batman Beyond costume. I don't know. Maybe that says more, but like, I usually I'm like, we shouldn't get into these pre-orders. We shouldn't support them. If you don't pre-order, they'll stop doing it. But I got to be a little hypocritical on this one because I want to play it as Batman Beyond.
But you know, the Batman Beyond outfit looks kind of weird because it's not the Batman Beyond physique. It's
right.
So he's like a huge Batman wearing that outfit.
Yeah, it's like, because on Batman Beyond, which for those who don't know, and really you shouldn't be listening to the show if you don't know anything about Batman Beyond, was a cartoon about Batman in the future, and there was a younger, sleeker, more Batman in a techno suit. And this is more of a reskin where they just took regular stocky Bruce Wayne and just kind of grafted the costume onto it. But I don't fucking care. I want to play that game.
It looks cool. The outfit looks cool.
You had a chance to play it at E3, no?
I played it a little bit, and it's hard to get a sense when you're playing a game, but it just looks so good. The graphics look amazing. And, I did some of the combat. I couldn't really get a sense of all the new things that they're doing, but they were talking about how they've really overhauled the combat system, and that there are a lot more moves now, and there's a lot more flexibility to how to approach. Because what the first thing did that was so great was that you could fight 20 bad guys and actually feel like you're fighting 20 bad guys. It's not like,
and if you get punched in the first one, it's your fault. You had an opportunity to stop that. It's not like Streets of Rage or something where there's just punches flying every now and then you get hit. You can theoretically play through Batman without getting hit.
Exactly. And you know what? That's interesting that you say that, because to me, that is a hallmark of a good video game. You have to be able to go beginning to end without ever dying or getting hit once if you play perfectly. And there are a surprising amount of games that don't do that. And but Batman is not one of those games.
What would be another example of one of those?
One of those games where you can go through without ever getting hit?
Yeah.
Well, obviously the 2D games like Braid and Limbo and stuff, but I'm trying to think. I think you could do Gears of War without ever getting hit.
Yeah. You could do it without ever dying for sure. You might take a bullet here and there.
Yeah. But the other side is games. I'm thinking of games like Ninja Gaiden 2, which I love the first one so much. And then the second one, there's a lot of cheap shots, a lot of cheap hits. I'm playing this game called we're going to get to this, I'm sure, but I'm playing a game called Resistance 2 right now on the PlayStation 3. And there are definitely parts where you die because you don't know where the bad guy's coming from, and that it's designed that way. It's designed that you die so that you figure out how to not die the next time. And I think that's kind of bullshit. I think you should be able to figure it out the first time through.
A really good example of that is both Half-Lives, Half-Life 1 and Half-Life 2. I particularly remember playing the first Half-Life, and there's those scenes where the army is coming after you, which is a cool plot twist. I don't have to put a spoiler alert, and the game's like 15 years old now. But there's these army squads coming down on you, and they're coordinating with each other. And every time you die, it doesn't feel like you messed up or you're not good enough. It feels like you got outsmarted.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, the Half-Life games are amazing.
Yeah, we're obviously not breaking any new. Half-Life and Half-Life 2 are really good if you haven't heard yet. And so is Arkham Asylum and Gears of War. What made Arkham Asylum so exciting is that superhero games as a whole are terrible. And Batman in particular had so many bad games in his history. And you're so skeptical when everyone came out. So for them to nail it, and to nail it as hard as they did, I thought was really, really exciting. And Batman's a tough character to nail because he doesn't have superpowers. There's a great Spider-Man game, Spider-Man 2, which is based on the movie, where it's fun because you can swing around. But it's not totally obvious how to make a great Batman game.
you have to do a lot of things well. You have to do stealth and detective and fighting well. And because Batman, you're right, he doesn't have one strength. He's sort of good because he's good at a lot of different things. And Arkham Asylum really conveys that. My one issue with the game was detective mode. The game is so beautiful, but sometimes you have to go into detective mode so that everything sort of looks different. The colors look hypersaturated.
Yeah, and you can see
Just
through walls and you can kind of see what weapons your enemies have and vulnerable points and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I thought that that was a little too easy. That made the game quite easy, and also, the game is gorgeous. I shouldn't have to switch to a mode where it doesn't look as good. So I wonder how they're gonna do that. How they're gonna deal with that this time.
I haven't read that much about the game because I'm so excited about it that I don't want spoilers. I don't want to even know what villains I'm going to come across. But I have read a little bit. I got to know something. And at some point, I read something that said that that was something a lot of people said about the first game, that the detective mode was so helpful that a lot of people just ended up playing the whole game on detective mode, which is obviously not the point because it makes everything. You explained how it works. A lot of people play the game in detective mode, which is obviously not the point, and that's something they recognized and are apparently trying to remedy in the second one. And I don't quite recall how they were doing it, but they had acknowledged that that was a problem. They were going to fix it. The thing I'm most interested in seeing about that game is that the first one was actually, believe it or not, I think the comparison would be Metroid, where it wasn't, Arkham Asylum, which is the setting for the game, is more or less a bunch of different pockets, and you need to get this gadget to go into that pocket, then that pocket gives you this gadget to go back and explore that area, and it's somewhat linear. The second one apparently opens that up. The first one's called Arkham Asylum. This one's called Arkham City, and I guess you'll have the ability to, fly through the city and grapple around the city. I'm hoping it's going to be like Just Cause 2, which is an awesome game if you haven't played it, and I think that seems like the big shift in this one.
It looks amazing. I mean, you look at the graphics for Arkham Asylum were amazing. Now you take that and you make it a wide open city, like something like in a GTA game or something. It looks unbelievable. It looks too good to be true.
I mean, the best part for me, the reason I'm so into Batman, and I've read comic books and I like the movies, but the reason I'm so into Batman is the animated series. And the best part of the animated series is when Batman's falling down a building and he's got that grappling hook. That's his best gadget. So I want to see more of that in this game.
And I do think that they use more of that now that they're in an open city and stuff. And I thought the Scarecrow sequences in the first one were so good.
Yeah, they're pretty fun. They're a little like, so basically what happens is there's these moments where the Scarecrow, he puts you in these platforming challenges where they're almost, the game takes place in Arkham Asylum, which is based on reality anyway. You're not on Oa from Green Lantern. It's a real building, but then the Scarecrow will put you in these weird psychedelic levels.
And you don't sort of know what's real and what's not, and you get sort of paranoid. But the one part, this might be a big spoiler, there's one part where it looks like your Xbox fucks up and the game restarts.
Really?
And then
I don't remember that.
you don't remember that?
Is that weird?
It restarts the game, and then it does the opening sequence again, but the Joker and Batman are switched. So
Yeah.
So Batman is the one who's tied up, and Joker is the one who's sort of bringing him to the asylum. I thought that was kind of mind blowing.
Oh, right. I do remember that. And the game, it's fun when games kind of take that meta approach where they're going outside the game and into your real world. I can think of two other examples off the top of my head. One is Psycho Mantis in Metal Gear Solid, who read your memory card. And I think to beat him, you actually had to switch the port your controller which it was in. And
Because he knew what you were doing, so he could see the future, so you had to switch your controller port, and then he couldn't read what you were doing.
And then he would read your memory card and be like, "Oh, I see you're playing Castlevania," and they recorded a few lines for the other Konami games. The other one is the X-Men game on Genesis. To go back a little further, which actually there's a level where you beat it and it says you have to reset the system that you're on within the game, but you actually have to get up and press reset on your Genesis to get to the next level.
Oh my god, I had the X-Men game. I guess I just didn't get that far. Another game is this game called Eternal Darkness Sanity's Requiem.
Which is an amazing name for a game. That definitely sounds like a game that's going to screw with levels of reality.
Oh yeah, exactly. And it's they do that in that. There's a sanity bar meter, and if it gets high, you start seeing like crazy shit. Like people walking around on walls and stuff. But then if you get too insane, the game, it says, okay, you have to turn the game off. It's overheating or something, and you're actually not supposed to do that.
I love the idea of a sanity meter because if a game has, say, a magic meter or a health meter, those are things I don't actually have. But sanity is like I know how sane I am while I'm playing the game.
Exactly, and this game sort of preys on that. It wants to take it away. It wants to take your sanity away, Jeff.
Let's keep going because we got more games to go through. I think maybe so. This is an interesting one for me to be excited about. I think maybe the game I'm second most excited about is actually a re-release coming out for PlayStation 3. It is the Eco and Shadow of the Colossus collection coming out on PlayStation 3. And these are two old games. They're two PlayStation 2 games that are complete masterpieces, and they are being upgraded into HD. They're improving the frame rate. They're making them 3D if you're lucky enough to have a 3D television. And they're coming out again on PlayStation 3 this fall. Have you played either of these?
I actually haven't. This is a weird thing to admit. I went the Xbox route instead of the PS2. So there are a lot of PS2 games that I never played, and those two, I played some of Shadow of the Colossus with a friend, but those are two games I'm really excited about. These reissues, I think, are a great idea. They redo the graphics and everything.
Oh, totally. Because the thing about a movie is that if you want to watch Citizen Kane, or you want to watch Citizen Kane, let's use Citizen Kane. If you want to watch Citizen Kane, it's still pretty much the same experience. You put in the DVD, you're still watching the movie. It's, in fact, probably a little better than it was before because it's been remastered or whatever. But it's very, very difficult to go back and to enjoy and to appreciate an old video game because there's just mechanics that don't work anymore. Some of the graphics, particularly in PlayStation 1, are so ugly that and just technically it's difficult. I mean, most people, for instance, if you want to play Duck Hunt, you really can't play Duck Hunt on a TV that exists anymore. Not that Duck Hunt's the game that everyone has to go back and play, but there's a technology barrier of it too. So these re-releases really do offer an opportunity to enjoy games that you never played before. And God, Kumail, if you never played Eco, you gotta play this game.
Oh, I'm so excited. I'm so excited. And what I did was I got the Sly Cooper collection that they redid. It came out a few months ago for the PS3. And that's in 3D, and I've been playing it on my 3D TV, and that's really awesome. I never played those games. I played God of War 1 and God of War 2 again because they reissued those with redone HD graphics, and I'm excited about Eco and Shadow of the Colossus, and they're redoing the first Halo game is coming out with redone graphics that I'm excited about.
I want to try to sell people on Eco. First of all, interesting story about Eco. This is a game I lived with 3 other people in college. Not all of them played video games, believe it or not. But when we got Eco, when I got into Eco, and I don't remember how this started, but people would not be in the room with each other while they were playing Eco because they didn't want to see how the puzzles were solved. We would just, and this is people who never beat a video game before or since, refused to watch other people play it so they could experience it for themselves. It's such a great game, and it's a lot like Braid and Portal, which are maybe the 2 best games of the last decade, in that they all have this thing in common where they have these puzzles that are difficult. They're not easy, but they're very, very solvable. It's not like an old Monkey Island game where the solution is that you have to go and combine the fish with the bottle and throw it at the whale to make the whale get you something. It's nothing like that. Everything you need to know is in front of you, and if you work at it hard enough, you can solve it. And I'm reminded what one of my friends, actually one of Streeter's friends, Tim, said about Inception recently, because we were talking about the movie Inception, and he said after you watch it, you just feel smarter. You're like, wow, my brain can do that? I'm good. And that's kind of the experience you get with these, both Eco and Shadow of the Colossus. They both have puzzles that seem impossible, but if you work at, you really can get, just like Braid and Portal.
Yeah, no, exactly. And what I loved about Braid and Portal was that thing. Like when you started one of the later levels in Braid, you would start playing and you'd be like, this, I am not going to be able to ever do this. But then it's all there. And once you figure it out, it seems very simple. And the cool thing about Portal, Portal 2, is that if you play co-op, it's a totally different game. And so it's that almost doubled. So now you have 2 people trying to figure out this one puzzle. And the solution's always there in front of you. It's never that. It's complicated, but it's not obscure. You can sort of figure it out. And I've heard that game's also very emotionally affecting.
Yeah, Eco has the plot of Eco is about this horned boy who's kind of a freak and he's an outcast. And this is told very minimally. It's one of the you don't get all the details filled in. He's just kind of been ostracized, and he has to lead this princess through a castle. That's pretty much the game, and there are no cutscenes between them where you get more of the dialogue. This is all through gameplay and leading her around by the hand, and the characters both helping each other. That this relationship between them develops. It's not done through cutscenes where they have to spell everything out. It's done through setting and tone and gameplay. And you rarely see that. It's such a good game, and it's a rare game because it didn't sell very well when it came out. It's not a long game. Both those games, they take, again, like Portal, I don't know, 10 hours to beat. The first Portal's a little shorter, and Braid's a little shorter too. It's an Xbox Live game. But they take, a few hours to beat. You beat them, they're great, but then they're not particularly replayable. But what I'm excited about is that I haven't played Eco in a decade since it came out. So I've forgotten all of the solutions, and I'm really excited to go back and check that game out again and appreciate it all anew.
Yeah, and what I liked, what you were saying about the way that it sort of gets you emotionally involved in the story, not through cutscenes, but through sort of tone. That's what I thought was really impressive about Braid, and that Braid doesn't even really have a linear narrative that you could actually say. Like, it's hard to say the events that happen in that game, but the end of that game is so affecting, and it's kind of mind-blowing. What they did with so little was really, really interesting. And then the other game, Shadow of the Colossus, is just a series of boss battles, right?
Yeah, pretty much. There's the Colossi. You have to beat the Colossi, and pretty much each level is just beating the boss. But the bosses are levels unto themselves where you have to climb all over them. There's this other element of the game where you have to find them, and you hold your sword up to the sun, and the sun reflects where you have to go. There's this beam of light, and but it goes as the crow flies. It just shows that you have to go past this mountain range, and what you kind of have to do, and there's no map or anything, is explore and find your own way around the mountain range. And that's something that's really fun. And you don't, if you play BioShock 2, and I believe in BioShock 1, there is an arrow at the top of the screen that is always pointing in the direction you should go. BioShock's a really smart game, but nothing makes you feel dumber than literally hanging an arrow above you, constantly pointing in the right direction. Which, by the way, I need. I have a terrible sense of direction, and that works within video games too. I have a bad sense of direction in video games. But Shadow of the Colossus is a game that challenges you to here's some mountains, find your way around it.
Yeah, and that game, I saw it not too long ago again on the PS2. And visually, it still looks pretty good because it is pretty stylistic. It's not a game that's going for neither of those games, Eco or Shadow of the Colossus. They're not going for like photorealism. They're going for more of a stylized look. And that's a look that holds up better than, a game that's trying to look more realistic. I'm so excited to play those games. And their next game looks amazing too.
The Last Guardian. I mean, that's the one. If that was coming out this Christmas, that would be the one I'm most excited about. That game looks incredible. But I get the sense that Team Eco, they're very much artists with a capital A. And they've made, I think, two of the best games ever. So good for them, and they deserve it. But I get the sense, that game's coming out when it's ready. It's not like Call of Duty where you're getting one every year no matter what.
Yeah, it's like the opposite of Madden, that game is.
Yeah, exactly.
It's supposed to come out this year, but then they pushed it to next year. But yeah, I'm kind of like, take your time, do what you need to do.
I think Shadow of the Colossus, you're right that it's stylized so it holds up, but the frame rate is for shit. And that's actually the game that put me on to this playing old games can be difficult. I did not play that game when it first came out. I only played it a few years ago, a few years into the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3, and I went back and played this PlayStation 2 game, and it's an incredible game, but it was still very difficult to play just because it just looked hideous. I mean, it's like watching a movie that was shot on 16 millimeter. I mean, it's that much of a... Is 16 millimeter okay? Can you shoot on 16 millimeter? It's like shooting on 2 millimeters.
It looks okay, I think.
It's like, the game's only a few years old, but it's like playing something from a completely different era.
Yeah, I'm excited that they're redoing all these games. I'm excited about the Halo reissue, and the one I'm most excited about, it was supposed to come out in a couple of weeks, but I think it got pushed. Is Silent Hill 2 and Silent Hill 3. They're redoing the graphics and re-releasing them, and I think those are the two best horror games ever made. So I'm really excited about those.
I'm a huge fan of Zero Punctuation. Have you ever seen it?
Yes,
I
yes.
love Zero Punctuation, and he always cites Yahtzee, who does them. These incredible web videos where he does these really fast-paced reviews that manage to be both hilarious and insightful. Really like biting criticism of the games, really intelligent, well thought out criticism, while it's hilarious. And he always cites Silent Hill 2 as pretty much as one of his favorite games, one of the only games to really nail storytelling. And I've actually only played Silent Hill 1, so I would like to go back and play that one myself. But I think what's exciting about Ico and Shadow of the Colossus is that they were both, in their time, cult hits. Things like Halo or Ocarina of Time, lots of people played those, and they should still come out for a new generation. But Ico and Shadow of the Colossus are two of the best games ever. I mean, these are really pushing the limits of what can be done in this medium, and so few people have played them because they're both just kind of obscure cult hits. So I'm really glad they're getting another opportunity to be seen.
Yeah, and like I said, I never played them, so I can't wait to play those games.
You got to check them out. It's so good. Another one that's coming out, and when we talked about what games we were going to talk about in this episode, you suggested a few of your own, and one of them I was surprised to see on the list was Oddworld Stranger's Wrath.
Oh, okay. That's another one of those cult hit games. It was on the Xbox. I love that game.
I've actually played it, and I like it a lot, but when I heard they were releasing it, I thought, all right, okay.
Well, the Oddworld games were games that none of those games really did that well. What I liked about those games was that they truly are very, very odd, and they create their own world, and it's a very immersive world, which is impressive because it is so weird. And I love Stranger's Wrath a lot because I think it's actually got a good story, and it's got a pretty crazy twist in it that sort of
Oh, interesting. I didn't play it far enough to get to the twist.
to me it was kind of mind-blowing. The twist in it was it's kind of fucking crazy. What I liked about that game was that all the weapons are like basically different critters that you shoot out.
That was cool. That was an interesting idea. I love Oddworld. So there's 4 Oddworld games. I was going to say there are 3. There are 4 Oddworld games: Abe's Odyssey, Abe's Exodus,
And then
Munch's Odyssey or Exodus, and then Stranger's Wrath. I've played all of them because Abe's Odyssey is one of my favorite games of all time. It actually fits first of all, there's a game that really tells a story with setting and tone. It's crazy, but it's also very dark. It's not too crazy. And it fits into that, what we're talking about, like that Braid and Portal kind of action puzzle platformer subgenre where the puzzles look very difficult, but then you play through them enough or you stare at it long enough, and it is solvable. And there's a lot of cool things you can do in that game. Like fart. For instance, you can make Abe fart.
Good, let's buy it. Well, and I think Stranger's Wrath was different from the other games in that it was more of a straight shooter. But it was third person, but you could also play it. You shoot in first person, but in a way, it was also a puzzle game in that you'd come upon sort of an area with 20 bad guys, and the way you could defeat them, you had a lot of options in the way to approach like every situation. I really, really loved that game, and it was kind of a bummer for me that the Oddworld, I believe that company folded.
I don't know what happened, because Oddworld, they were talking about making, it was going to be a quintology, they were going to make a movie. I think that's such a great universe. It's kind of Tim Burton-y, but a little more sci-fi, and it's such a great universe, and I'm always disappointed that they never made more Oddworld games. I mean, Munch's Odyssey was an Xbox launch title. This was a huge series for a time.
And they did start work on another Oddworld game that then never came out. I believe after Stranger's Wrath, there was another game that they were working on with like a hippo. There's like a hippo in it. I have to look this up. But yeah, they were working on a game, and then I believe they just ran out of money or something.
Kind of the big one that's coming out that we haven't talked about it yet. I mean, first of all, we haven't talked about the Wii at all yet, because the Wii is almost like a lame duck system at this point. We're all just kind of waiting for Wii U. But come out this Christmas, there's a new Zelda game, and that's always a big deal. Skyward Sword is finally coming out. Are you excited about that one?
Well, I don't know. Why aren't people excited about it? It doesn't feel like there's a lot of excitement about that game. I feel like part of it, you're right. The Wii is a lame duck system, and it's sort of done clearly, and Nintendo realizes that. But I don't know. For some reason, I haven't really been excited about it. I mean, every Zelda game is amazing. I just, honestly, I don't like the Wii. I don't like controlling it. I don't like shooting arrows by using the nunchucks. I don't like that. It takes me out of the game.
Skyward Sword looks like it's an awful lot of shooting things using the nunchuck and swinging the Wii remote around. And I think that's maybe why people are skeptical about it, because that's something that Nintendo's been trying or Nintendo and other companies have been trying since the Wii came out years ago, and I don't think anyone's nailed it yet. And I guess this is kind of their last chance before they move on to Wii U.
I just feel like the control on the Wii feels so gimmicky to me that it always takes me out of the game. When I'm playing, in some ways the regular controllers are maybe not super intuitive, but we've sort of grown up on them. And to me, a regular controller is not a barrier to experiencing a video game. But the Wii controller, partially because it is more evolved than the other ones, the technology is pretty impressive. I think the side effect of the technology being so impressive is that I'm never really immersed in the game. I'm always sort of thinking about the technology and how to make the movement the way they want me to make it.
That's the thing, because when you play Gears of War, you're never thinking, okay, I got to go up to this wall. Now it's time to press the A button. You just know I got to go up to this wall, and it's so immersive and the controls are so tight that you just think it and do it. But when you're playing Skyward Sword, there's this extra, or I haven't played Skyward Sword yet, but when you're playing most Wii games, there's this extra layer between you and the game where you're not thinking, I have to swing my sword. You're thinking Link has to swing his sword, which means I have to poke it, but the system's kind of particular, so I got to start up here.
Yeah, no, I'm always way too aware of what I'm doing when I'm playing the Wii. My favorite game of the Wii is the new Super Mario World. What's it called? It's just the
new Super Mario Brothers, right?
I think that game is awesome, and because that doesn't really use the Wiimote bullshit.
No, in fact, the worst parts of the game are where you have to shake the remote, which is very unnatural, and it seems like they're moving on to something else. So this is kind of, if they don't get it here, I think we didn't work for. I mean, obviously we worked. They made a boatload of cash doing it, but the Wii didn't work for traditional games. It was more of a toy for Wii Sports and for Boom Blocks, which is probably the only other Wii game I can really recommend without reservation. But those were the only games that ever really took advantage of the motion control. Every other game that's great on the Wii, New Super Mario Brothers, Mario Kart, they're almost great despite the motion control.
I would love Mario Kart if I didn't have to use the thing like a wheel. I really don't like the Wii controls, and it works well for Wii Sports and stuff, but those are not deep games. I think I said this on my podcast, but I think the average Wii system has been played about 20 times.
That's very.
And then they never play them. Like my in-laws have them. And they played them the first week and never again,
And I think that's cool. I mean, I think Nintendo found a new type of person to sell video games to, and that's awesome. But I think it's just not for people like me and you, and probably people that listen to any podcast, much less this one.
That's a good point. Exactly. It's for old people and very, very young kids.
What else is coming out that you're excited about?
What were the other ones that we emailed about?
The other really premier titles coming out are there's Assassin's Creed.
I love the Assassin's Creed games. I think the jump from the first one to the second one was massive. The second one is one of my favorite games of all time, and I think they've done a really good job of keeping that storyline going and expanding the world, and some kind of crazy shit happens in it that you would not think would happen in a game like that. And I'm excited about that third one. It looks good.
Are they wrapping up the story in this third one? Isn't this the fourth one?
This is the third one. Oh, no, this is the fourth one. You're right. This is the fourth one. They are wrapping up the story, but they are saying that there will be more adventures with these characters of this world. So basically, they'll wrap up this one big story that they've been working towards, and then maybe do a prequel or the further adventures of Etsy or something like that. They won't stop making this game. They're just too successful.
That's something new that has happened in video games that is, I think, kind of cool, is that they're actually ending stories. I mean, obviously, something like Mario or Mega Man, it just goes on forever and ever, and they just keep kidnapping the princess or whoever it is. But we said this with Gears of War, too. They were like, no, this is a trilogy. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end. I have no doubt in my mind they'll make more games in the Gears of War universe, maybe prequels, maybe about some of the other soldiers that were out on the field. But I like the idea that they're telling a story that ends.
Yeah, same thing with Halo. The Halo games, all the first 3, 4 games sort of work as one story, but almost to the detriment of that franchise, because I believe it was the end of Halo 2, which has like a crazy cliffhanger.
Yeah.
And it pissed off a lot of people. It basically ends with the Covenant coming to Earth, or they're on their way to Earth, like the big Covenant ship finds it. I don't remember which one it was, but one of them has a crazy cliffhanger that I think pissed off a lot of people.
It was Halo 2, and I also don't remember the cliffhanger, but I definitely remember the rage that followed it.
Yeah, no, I was pissed off. I was like, what the fuck are you guys doing? But, the Halo games were, I thought they did a good job of wrapping up that story. And I think Assassin's Creed would also do a good job of wrapping up the story. Oh, another game that's coming out. This was a PS3 exclusive. It was a launch title, I believe, that was supposed to be sort of going up against Halo and Gears of War. It never got as big as those games, was the Resistance games.
Yeah, you mentioned Resistance 3. I gotta be totally honest, not only have I never played a Resistance game, I don't think I know anyone that has.
Resistance, okay, it's kind of a cool world. It seems like somebody in a boardroom came up with it. They were like, what are the 2 games that are popular? Halo, Aliens, Call of Duty, like World War II stuff, let's combine them. So it's a world, it's like late 1940s, early 1950s, and there's a full-scale alien invasion, like a Halo-type invasion, with huge ships and monsters, and you have sort of these really antiquated weapons. So it's a really cool world, and I'd never played them, but I started playing Resistance 2 recently, and it's really good, and it feels like one of those big Hollywood AAA titles. It's really epic. The bad guys are huge. The graphics are gorgeous. I don't know about the multiplayer, but the single player of Resistance 2 is actually really, really good. I would say on par with Halo. Really, really good, really epic, and I'm excited about the third one.
What are they doing in the third one that's new? I honestly thought the third one was out already. What's new?
Again, they're continuing the storyline, so it's going to be end of the trilogy. I don't know what they're doing multiplayer-wise, because to me, at any time, I just need the one multiplayer game, I don't need to have all of them. And that's part of the problem a lot of video games are doing. They're adding multiplayer modes to it, when really, there's really only 2 or 3 games that people are playing multiplayer at a time. So it's Call of Duty, Halo, Gears of War, Madden, or basketball, whatever, but that's it. They spent so much time developing them. So I don't know what multiplayer leaps they're taking, but I think this is the one where they wrap up the storyline, which is basically that, aliens have attacked Earth and now they're in America.
It's strange because all my friends are on Xbox Live. We're friends on Xbox Live. I don't have any friends. I have 0 friends on my PlayStation 3, whatever the equivalent is, PlayStation Network. So I never play PlayStation 3 games online.
No, me neither. I have one friend, and I've never played with him online. I get the PlayStation games. I get, the exclusive, obviously, like Uncharted and God of War and Resistance, but I never play it online.
I will often get the PlayStation 3 version because I have the option of both. I kind of prefer the PlayStation 3 controller. Like, I played Dead Space 2 on PlayStation 3 because it came with, God, what was it called? Some sort of the Dead Space that came out on the Wii.
Oh, it came with the cartoon.
No. There's a Dead Space on the Wii that has a subtitle, Dead Space Extraction. Who can remember? And
that's right.
And it's not like Dead Space 1 or 2. It's a light gun game, which I always liked light gun games, and it's apparently quite a good light gun game with different weapons you can switch. Most light gun games are really from the arcade and they're very simple, but this one apparently had weapons you could switch between, and the Dead Space universe, where the only way to kill the aliens is by cutting off their limbs, is obviously perfectly suited to a game like that. So I kind of wanted to try that, and I have a PlayStation Move. It worked with PlayStation Move, so I got the PlayStation 3 version. and it was great. But then I never checked out the multiplayer just because I don't have any friends on my PlayStation multiplayer list.
Also, I mean, multiplayer in Dead Space, I don't think it was that good. You know, they talk about stickiness, like how long they can keep a player to keep playing the game without returning it, selling it to GameStop. And they all put in multiplayer to do that. But, you know, games like Dead Space and even games like Assassin's Creed, where they really spend a lot of time on the multiplayer, those multiplayer games don't really last that long. Their big appeal is always the single player mode.
Yeah, I also like the Dead Space games. 2 was a little bit redundant with 1, but they're both good games. And I particularly the first one. But when I heard that they were doing multiplayer, I kind of want to be like, guys, don't worry about it. I'd rather you just focus on the single player. That's why I'm coming.
Yeah, we like you the way you are. We already have our multiplayer games, you know? I mean, like I said, I'm going to be playing Gears of War 3 or Call of Duty or something. And Dead Space's multiplayer is never going to be able to make a dent in that, you know?
That said, I think Assassin's Creed, and I never got particularly into it, but I thought they had a very interesting approach to multiplayer that was really new and I had not seen before, where you were basically it wasn't a death match, you were basically stalking the other players in a crowd.
Yeah, no, that was really, really cool. Really, really interesting.
And I didn't get into it, but, you know, points for originality for sure.
Yeah, a lot of these multiplayer games, you know, when the sort of games jump through hoops to get a multiplayer mode going, it just seems, I think, a little complicated for people. Like Call of Duty and Halo and Gears are pretty simple. You just shoot people. But some of these games like work so hard to come up with new modes that I think it's sort of people just get intimidated by them.
So I think those are the big ones coming out. I think those are the ones I'm really excited about that I suspect people will be talking about before the end of the year. Did we miss anything?
I don't think so. I mean, that's a lot of awesome games.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. And someone just asked me, actually, because I'm reading Game of Thrones, and they said, well, how do you have time to read this 1,000-page book? And I said, books and movies are not a problem. It's keeping up with video games that is difficult. Mass Effect is like 30 Game of Thrones.
Oh my god, yeah. And with games like that, if you get a couple week like a break, I forget where I am, I forget what I'm doing, I'm out of the game. I mean, Resident Evil Code Veronica, I believe, was the one where I had to try it the third time starting from the beginning because I would just forget where I was if I didn't play it for a little bit.
And you started it in 2004 and you're just ready to pick it up again now.
I would do it again. Actually, I did beat it. I beat that game. But there's a game called Fatal Frame 2, which I want to recommend this game, Fatal Frame 2.
I heard about you talk about it in your podcast. I thought it sounded interesting.
It's one of the scariest games I've ever played. It's beautiful. It's brilliant. It's on the Xbox and PS2, but I know that the Xbox version plays on the 360 because that's where I've been playing it again. Really, really good game. And again, the graphics aren't perfect, but the game is so dark and atmospheric and sort of based on the creep factor that the graphics are actually they don't age that poorly. It's a really scary game and it's very unique.
Kumail, where can people go to hear you talk more about video games?
You can go to nerdist.com, listen to my podcast, The Indoor Kids. We talk about video games every week. Every Monday it comes out.
Awesome. Kumail, I remember, I think it was the first time I saw you do stand-up when you were still living in New York. Maybe it was the first time I saw you, but I remember at Ochi's Lounge in Comics seeing you perform, and you were on stage talking about Shinobi. And you were being about, I don't actually remember what, but I do remember the game. You're talking about Shinobi, and I remember, one, I was thinking it was very funny, but two, just thinking, you can do that? You can talk about video games on stage and be fun? I didn't know that was allowed. I thought there was a rule against it. And you were doing it, and you're being very funny about it. So it's so exciting to listen to you do it for an hour every week. I'm loving the show.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think the trick is just to be able to get people to sort of relate to what it is about video games that you find exciting and passionate, you know. And Revenge of Shinobi, which is what that bit was about. If I had to pick one game that is my favorite game, because of when it came out and you know how much I loved it, Revenge of Shinobi for the Genesis is like my game.
Shinobi's a game that's kind of due for a remake, you know, a Shinobi Age. I think they tried one on PlayStation 2.
They did do one, and it looked sort of like a Ninja Gaiden. I never played it, but I heard it wasn't very good.
He had a long red ribbon, right?
Yeah, he had a long.
Yeah, I played that game. That was all right. Again, Kumail, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
That is it for our 10th episode anniversary spectacular. course, I am half kidding, but this is something of a milestone for me. When I started the show, 2.5 months ago, I didn't know if it was something I was going to enjoy. I didn't know if other people would care. And I didn't want to just do one episode, decide I didn't like it, and give up. So in my head, and this is only in my head, I committed to doing 10 episodes. I figured I'd do 10, one a week, every week, to really get a sense of if I liked it. The exciting news is now that we have done 10 episodes, I am proud to report that I do like doing it, and the Jeff Rubin Show has just received a mental pickup through the end of the year, and honestly, it's hard for me to imagine not doing it well beyond that. Thank you to everyone that's left a good review on iTunes. I hate you. If you haven't, I hate you, but you know what? Keep listening anyway. But probably the most exciting part of all this is I feel like I'm just starting to maybe get the hang of it. And there's some really exciting episodes, some really fun episodes I'm looking forward to coming up. For instance, in the coming weeks, we are going to have an episode with someone from themeparkreview.com and a roller coaster track designer. We are going to be talking about Native American cross-stitching. I'm just kidding. We're going to be talking about roller coasters. It's going to be awesome. Also going to be talking to the guys from everythingisterrible.com. If you don't know Everything is Terrible, that's your homework. Go watch some of their videos. You will know when these episodes come out if you follow my blog. That's on Tumblr. It's jeffrubin.com. My Twitter, that's @JeffRubinShow. I have a Facebook fan page. And I'm just so glad we're going to keep talking. Thanks again, everybody.